Great to be here with you on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. So much to get to here on the show. Tommy Bowden going to join us, former Clemson head coach. We'll talk college football playoffs with him. Brooks Austin of Dogs Daily on SIs. He joins us each Monday. We'll talk with him on the show as obviously Georgia did not win the SEC championship game, and they move and they move on to the college football playoffs, which we knew that was going to happen regardless. So he will join us coming up here in about 30 minutes. And also Arthur Lynch, former Georgia Bulldog tight end, will join us coming up in the final hour. We'll get to your phone calls as well. 912-342-7184, 912-342-7184. You can join us here on the show. Share your thoughts on the SEC championship game and or send us a message on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube as we are streaming live there as well. We'll be happy to share your thoughts here on the show. Just leave us a Facebook, Twitter message, YouTube, and we'll talk about it on the show. But Ben, championship weekend has come and gone. We'll start off early. Oklahoma State and Baylor. A lot of folks said, hey, if Oklahoma State wins, do they have a better resume than Cincinnati? But they come up literally 6 inches short of winning the Big 12 championship. And right off the bat, you're saying, oh, well, there's one domino to fall. Then you get to the SEC championship game, and a lot of folks looking at that game thinking, you heard a lot of talk at College Game Day. Hey, it's Georgia's time. They're going to get over the hump. They're going to climb the mountain. They're playing so well. Alabama's been kind of shaky. 41-24 later, Alabama's the SEC champs and the number one seed in the college football playoffs.
Wow. I mean, that first one, Kevin, though, when you go back to Baylor and Oklahoma State, the running back panicked. Like, the thing about football is, look, he just tried to outrun you to the goal line. Listen, run at him, give a little stiff arm, give you a little bit more time to try to get in. But that you talk about down to the wire, because Oklahoma State give a lot of credit. They battled back in that game. Baylor was having their way all game. Oklahoma battled back. Oklahoma State. We talk about the SEC championship game. Going into that game, I was like, look, if Alabama can find a way to have sustained drives, come away with points, and neutralize that pass rush, they got a shot. Because I kept saying this all year about Georgia secondary. I did not know if Georgia secondary was good, bad, great, middle of the road. But we kept asking, Kevin, when was Bryce Young going to have his Heisman moment? He had a bunch of them on Saturday, from getting outside the rush, that big scramble on third down to then get that fumble. When the ball came out, obviously where he, set a record. This was the 30th, I think the 30th SEC championship game. He broke the record for most, passing yards or most yards from scrimmage or something like that in the game. But I don't think it was Georgia underwhelming as much as because people kept we kept saying this. It's still Alabama, right? They almost lost to LSU. That's called winning. They almost lost to Auburn. That's called winning. They lost by 3 points to Texas A&M. That's the only game they've lost in 2 years. But Kevin, Alabama put it all on display. Now, our hearts and prayers, goes out to John Mitchell, who I think tore his ACL in the game. But Alabama's defense, they played better in the second half. You go back to 2 years ago when Stetson Bennett went to Tuscaloosa, he had a really, really good first half. Came out the second half through 2 interceptions. You look at this game, he had a good first half. Came out in the second half through 2 interceptions, which I think, if I go back to the tape, I think he could have threw four, maybe 5. But I'm not here to talk about the fact that Alabama is Alabama. And the thing about it is they saved their best performances, Kevin, for the SEC championship game. Going back to when they played against this Georgia team, 2 years ago, with Auburn being in the middle. And I just think that sometimes we get so caught up in what has happened. I go, look, you do enough to win your division, win your conference. To try to go to the conference championship game. The consolation prize is Alabama. And Will Anderson, who was the best defender in the game, probably didn't have his best showing. But that Georgia defense, I'm gonna blame it on fatigue more than anything else, because Kevin, 7-on-7 is when the pass rush can't get there, and Bryce Young was just sitting back there waiting on guys to get open. And dare I say, he had an incredible night. Kirby Smart, he was very, very humble in defeat. He was saying that, look, man, he said if you give Bryce Young time, he's gonna pick you apart, which is what he did. He definitely sealed the Heisman on Saturday night. But this Alabama team is proving one thing: they are still the team to beat. They are still very, very dangerous. And dare I say, Cincinnati, congratulations on making it to the show. Your consolation prize, you get to see what it's like to play them boys from Tuscaloosa.
No, certainly. And again, Michigan just absolutely obliterates Iowa in the Big Ten. Pitt and Wake Forest was back and forth. I think they scored almost 40 points in the first quarter. I think it had 42 points in the first quarter. Pitt ends up winning the football game. Kenny Pickett had an unbelievable moment with a fake slide, ends up going for a touchdown, and you had some great quarterback play going on there. But we know, as you said, Ben, the playoffs are set. Alabama versus Cincinnati, Georgia versus Michigan. I know I've already heard this. Oh, well, Alabama's going to obliterate Cincinnati. I can't believe that. Look, BJ has said on the show, you're not supposed to dictate matchups, which we know happens because there was no way Georgia and Baylor were going to rematch in the first round of the playoffs. They weren't going to do it. But either Cincinnati has earned their right to be there or they haven't. A lot of people said, I included, all of us on the show said, look, they deserve the right to be there if they run the table and they'll have the resume to do it. Didn't think they would get there. And, hey, I think if Oklahoma State had won, it might have been into question as to whether or not they get in there. So, they're in there, and people say, oh, like, great Cincinnati. Now you're going to get blasted by 30 by Bama. Well, what just happened in the SEC championship game? If Alabama was playing Baylor in the first round, would anybody be saying, oh, man, this could be a 3-point ball game? No, you'd be saying Alabama's going to I don't think it matters necessarily who Alabama played in the first round, unless maybe it was an Ohio State who got back in there. I think most people will be looking at it saying, look, Alabama is getting better. They just played a tremendous football game, and now you're going to go into the playoffs where Nick Saban's going to have a month, essentially, or 3 weeks to get ready to play somebody. They're going to put together a heck of a ball game. So I don't think you can look at it and say, man, if Cincinnati loses and loses big, that just shows they shouldn't have been there. Nope. They earned their way to get there. And tell me who you would put in there that earned their way in there that would do better than what Cincinnati potentially does. Because, again, Ohio State's out. Lost too much. Oklahoma State, out. Lost too much. You're talking Notre Dame. I mean, do you think if Alabama and Notre Dame lined up right now, Alabama wouldn't be a 10-point favorite? Of course they would. So I think that's one of those things where don't put all the stock into, well, Cincinnati's going to lose potentially big, so they shouldn't have been there. I don't buy that. I do think Alabama's going to win big, but I don't think that invalidates Cincinnati in the fact that they earned the spot.
I don't either. I think too often at times, Kevin, we get caught up in, who the team is and not look at what they've done. Cincinnati did the opposite of what UCF did. UCF, they peaked too early. UCF went undefeated, beat Auburn, and then came back next year undefeated and lost to LSU. Cincinnati, right, they lost to Georgia last year, and then they peaked this year. They got a late round. They got a potential first-round draft pick in Desmond Ritter. They got 2 bookend corners. They got a team and they added Notre Dame to their resume. What hurt Notre Dame the most is the team in front of them beat them. So that's what's going to. There's no way you could have justified putting Notre Dame over Cincinnati when Cincinnati played Notre Dame at Notre Dame and beat them. But I will say this: this is why we play the game. Nobody thought that Cincinnati would make it a game last year with Georgia, and I don't want to hear this. Who Georgia didn't have planned. Georgia was scratching and clawing for every ounce, and they won by a field goal. I think when even the second matchup, people talking about Georgia's going to annihilate Michigan. I'm going to tell you guys something again. You got to look at the stakes. This ain't a regular season game to where you got another game behind it. This is for everything. The one thing Michigan can do, they can get after the passer. Michigan might have the number 1 pick in the nation. Number 1 pick in the draft at defensive end. So I just think that Harbaugh finally got over Kevin. It's something about
you want to talk about cresting a hill.
Absolutely.
They haven't been in the playoffs at all and finally got over Oklahoma State. So.
I go back to 2019.
Ohio State, excuse me. 2019
LSU. What did 2019 LSU team do? They finally beat Alabama. What hadn't happened in a long time, LSU had beaten Alabama, right? That they lost by 3. They won by 3 that year against who? Auburn, who had Bowden, who was a true freshman that year at quarterback. So all I'm saying is keep looking past the SEC. I get it. The SEC got some of the biggest brands, best teams, best coaches. I get it. But don't think they cannot be beat. This same Georgia team, people say Georgia should have got Cincinnati. I'm telling you right now, Georgia didn't want Cincinnati. They want to say, listen, I want to go ahead and deal with these Michigan boys. But Michigan finally exercised a lot of demons when you talk about Ohio State. That has been, Kevin, we just call it a game. It hasn't been a game for a long time. Jawan Howard was there. Desmond Howard was there. Charles Woodson was there. Brian Greasy was there. Brian Greasy's everybody who went to Michigan was there to celebrate when Harbaugh got to the hump. So don't look past any team that's in this that's not in the SEC, because I'm telling you, Kevin, I mean, it's probably not going to happen. But if Michigan beats Georgia and freaking Cincinnati found a way to scratch a claw and beat Alabama, it was a Cincinnati-Michigan national championship. It's not. I'm not saying it's going to be there. So calm down. But Kevin, I agree with you. Show some respect for the teams that made it here, and the most dangerous team in it might be Cincinnati, because they still starting to scratch and claw for respect like they didn't earn it.
Yeah, and again, nothing to lose. Alabama's again going to have to play a great game, but I think you look at a focus. Not that Nick Saban hasn't been focused, but he has an ability to really, and he said in the postgame, hey, appreciate that rat poison. It was yummy this week. So it's like, I think he has a way to focus his team. And there are certain guys, Ben, we talk about in coaching. If you give them time and they just have to play one team, and it's all or nothing, and you give him time. I mean, how many coaches would you take other than Nick Saban? Hey, I'm going to give you
in college.
I'm going to give you 3 weeks with his program to get the job done against an opponent. I think it's Nick Saban. I would say the same. I mean, you look at college basketball. Give Mike Krzyzewski 2 weeks to play a top 5 team in college basketball. You don't think he's going to have a great chance of beating you? I think he does. So, I give Nick Saban a lot of credit, because outside of Bama fans didn't hear a lot of, we're going to pick Bama. I think on this, I think in this week, we all took Georgia into points. I think in the SEC championship game, we're laid some points. So not a lot of people thought Alabama was going to win. Ironically, doing the whole thing. Hey, never pick against Bama until proven otherwise. A lot of people this week all said, man, Georgia's just playing too good. And Nick Saban got it together and got the job done. Got a quick comment, Ben, from Adam Fisher there on Facebook. As a UGA fan, I'm glad Bama got Cincy in the first round. They are extra hyped to make the playoff and will be a hard out. No doubt. I think that's what Ben was saying. Like, don't just discount hey, no, they understand what it took for them to get there. Because don't think that they're not going in week to week, go, fellas, we got to win. Because if we lose one, heck, if we win one and it don't look right, we might not get in. So don't think that what Luke Fickell knows, like, he's telling his team, guys, don't play Alabama scared. Don't go in here thinking, oh, they're better than us. No, they're there to prove a point. And it may be a hard point to prove, but nevertheless, they're going to get their opportunity to go out there and get it done. Again, there was a time when people said, oh, Boise State has no chance. And they bumped off Oklahoma.
I mean, that same Boise State team that played Georgia in the then Georgia Dome first game of the year when Georgia had on those Power Ranger looking uniforms. Haven't seen those helmets or uniforms since. And Kellen Moore, that quarterback, where is he now? He would be the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. So people, I'm just saying, Kevin, the most dangerous teams listen, who has the most fun at the party? The people who got in there last. What's the best kind of food? Free food. All I'm telling people is this Cincinnati team has run the gauntlet, and they've already played one of the teams in the Final Four, that being Georgia, which came down to the wire. Watch out for them Bearcats, man. They got a point to prove.
Yeah, we got more to come here. We'll chat with Tommy Bowden. When we come back, Brooks Austin will join us in about 20 minutes, but we'll chat with the former Clemson head coach when we return here on 3 and Out of the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. And we are joined by the former Clemson head football coach, Tommy Bowden, who joins us here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome. How are you?
Good afternoon. Doing good. A little cloudy down here in the Panhandle of Florida, but it's 75, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, there's worse places to be for sure. But we get ready for the postseason in college football. Obviously, the playoffs, Alabama versus Cincinnati, Georgia versus Michigan. Obviously, it seemed to have worked out. Everybody had, 3-4 weeks of hand-wringing, and it seemed to have worked itself out.
It really did. And, that's been the case just about every year they've had this selection committee. I've been very impressed with who they've picked. And I think they hit it right again. I think they have about every year.
Coach, what does a team like Cincinnati get in do for, teams like Cincinnati? You understand that UCF had a resume real similar to Cincinnati a couple of years ago, but what does a team like Cincinnati do for the rest of college football?
Well, it gives them hope. But I will say this about Cincinnati. I think the only reason they got in because of what they did last year and the year before. If they were a one-year flash in the pan, I don't believe they would have gotten in. I think the committee took their work over the last couple of years and said, okay, this is a solid program. But it gives programs like Cincinnati and the group of five that don't have the resources, don't have the name, don't have the marketing skills, hope that they can get in. But I do think you have to a couple of good years of resume.
Yeah, and Coach, I agree with that sentiment, but aren't we as the college football playoff folks, aren't they supposed to evaluate not on what happened last year, but happened this year? And is that maybe a minor flaw in the system there?
You're supposed to, but again, I'm not sure if you went solely off this year. Now, I don't have the statistics in front of me. You might, but if you look at overall strength of schedule, I'm not sure that Cincinnati would be in based solely off this year. Now, they might have been, but I do think they take last year and the year before in the back of their mind. I don't think it's a big piece of the puzzle, but I do think it's in the back of their mind. But I'm glad Cincinnati's in because I think they are deserving this year.
And, Coach, who's a more dangerous team? Obviously, you know about Alabama, you know about Georgia, but who's a more dangerous team? Cincinnati, because of the road it took to get here, or a Michigan team that finally got over the hump, beating Ohio State, and, Coach Harbaugh finally getting that Big Ten championship?
No, I really think Michigan is because of their overall strength and talent. They've got a defensive end. They think that Mike could be the number one player picked in the draft, but he's a difference maker. No, but they have another guy on the other end that's a difference maker. Then they have an offensive line that's going to be able to handle, I don't want to say handle, but be able to hold their own versus Georgia's front. So I think Michigan is the best chance to come out of the four teams as the national championship other than Alabama. But I like their chances because I think they just got a little more size, strength, and depth than what a team like Cincinnati does.
Tommy Bowden joining us here on 3 Night. You talk about Georgia versus Michigan, and seems like a tale, Coach, of two teams trying to scale the mountain. Michigan took, close to a decade or more to finally beat Ohio State and put themselves in this position. Georgia, a lot of talk going into the SEC championship game. This is the year you bump down Nick Saban and finally crest the mountain. They didn't do it. May get another shot. It seems like kind of two stories that are awfully similar to one another in Georgia and Michigan trying to get to that next level.
Yeah, I think one of the things you have to look for here is the mentality, the makeup mentally of the team. For example, I bet you Michigan, every player, every member of that staff, their number one goal was not the national championship, but was to beat Ohio State. So to me, they've reached their pinnacle. Is that they want to win the national championship now? Yes. Georgia, on the other hand, their goal was to win the national championship. So their goal is still out there. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking Michigan, they've already reached the top of the mountain for them, which is beating Ohio State. So I think Georgia, I like Georgia's mental frame of mind right now better than Michigan.
And, Coach, switching gears a little bit, your former team, Clemson, obviously, it's been reported that Coach Venable is going to be the next head coach at Oklahoma. And, offensive coordinator, has been reports that Tony Ellie has ties to Duke or Virginia. Talk about, the year Clemson had, or, that obviously didn't meet expectation, and they're going to look up next year in 2022, and they're going to have a total different staff, definitely at the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator positions.
I think the number one thing as a coach, the most important criteria is recruit. And number two, I think it's your staff. and he's already lost Venables. I saw his press conference, so he's been hired at Oklahoma. Tony Elliott is a prime contender at Duke and Virginia. Those would be two critical losses. There is another Brent Venables out there somewhere, and at $2.3 million, you can bring him in. But I don't think there's going to be a Brent Venables that has his established resume. Brent Venables had a resume at Oklahoma before Dabo hired him. So it's very, very critical hire. If you remember, he fired Billy Napier after 1 year. Billy Napier's a pretty good coach, but he replaced him with Chad Morris, who brought in an offense that led them to a national championship. So critical decision for Dabo Swinney. He's made decisions like this, but it's important that he replace at least Venables, maybe Tony Elliott.
Hey, Coach, if you're a fan of a team in the ACC, if a team loses both their coordinators, do you feel like, hey, maybe it opens things up a little bit in the league?
Well, people are closing the gap, but Clemson is still the best team, and they're also the most talented. There's still a gap between whoever number two is. Like Pitt, for example, it's probably Pitt. But if he replaces those two guys, I think Clemson will immediately be back up top. Important hires, but they've still got great players, and they've got the main guy back, which is Dabo Swinney.
And Coach, while we have you, speaking of coaching hires and just craziness going on right now with these different coaches, different places, talk a little bit about what happened in Miami. They got Coach Cristobal. He agreed to terms, but Manny Diaz was out there recruiting, while Cristobal was trying to make up his mind.
I'm very disappointed in how they handle that situation. Everybody wants to be. I know Mario Cristobal wanted to be able to tell his team face to face. That was important to me when I left Tulane. I wanted to tell my players face to face before Clemson announced it, and I was able to do that. But again, Manny Diaz, how they handle him professionally, fans is short for fanatic, but fans didn't make that decision. That was made by the president, the board of trustees, and whoever, the more academia than fans. So really disappointed how they did it. But as you can tell by the last hires, money talks.
Yeah, in a big way. Coach Tommy Bowden, our guest here on 3 and Out. Coach, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Will do. Tommy Bowden, always a pleasure talking with him and talking college football as the playoffs are right around the corner. New Year's Eve is when we get those two semifinal games. We'll come back. Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI will join us. We'll break down all that didn't happen in the SEC championship game. But as Tommy Bowden said, Georgia still has plenty of life. They're in the playoffs, still can play for a national championship. That's out in front of them. Brooks Austin will join us next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. BJ's not here. I don't know why I said that, but we'll hopefully have BJ back later in the week. I was distracted by the fact our next guest is joining us from the Brooks Austin Bar and Grill. Brooks Austin, Dogs Taylor at SI, man. That's a sweet little setup you got there, my guy. It's like the little neon sign in the back, and we're ready to go. It's happy hour there at the Brooks Austin pad.
Yeah, it's actually just my garage, so it's not that fancy.
Well, Brooks,
that is not a joke.
Yeah. Obviously, SEC championship game for Georgia fans did not go as expected. We'll obviously can get into quarterback play, defense. What was the kind of the more egregious thing that stood out as to why Georgia looked like they hadn't looked for 12 weeks?
Yeah, so I think you've had stretches at times this year where your defense didn't look historic. I think you've had stretches of time this year where your offense has gone rather stagnant. Well, they happen to match up a stretch of run in terms of play and performance where both of them quite possibly looked the worst they had all year. I mean, right after it was Jamison Williams, 3rd and 2, 67-yard touchdown pass. From that moment on, I think there was 17 minutes of game time where Georgia went 3 and out and Alabama scored 3 consecutive times on 3 consecutive possessions. You can't do that. You cannot do that against good football teams and expect to win. I don't care how good you've been all year. When their defense finally was giving up points, their offense went stagnant until right before the end of the first half when Ladd McConkey scored on a 33-yard touchdown run. And even that they didn't do correctly. They scored way too quickly and gave Bryce Young the football back, right, and allowed him to double up right there before the half. I thought that was a major swing right there before the half as well. As soon as you get momentum, you turn around right and hand it back to Alabama and Bryce Young with 2 minutes and 10 seconds left to drive the length of the field on you in a college football game where the ball stops every first down. There was no doubt in my mind he was scoring right there before the half.
Brooks, talk about the fact that when you think about this Alabama offense, the one thing they did, they tried to keep Jordan Davis on the field. Jordan Davis is about as impactful as a player is going to be, but running the ball on 1st and 2nd down, that's still a lot of weight. Push it up against another human being, then going to 3rd down with the passing game. Talk about being able to not let a great playmaker who fatigue. I mean, let's face it, it caught up to him a little bit. They kind of used that against Jordan Davis a little bit on Saturday.
Well, that and too, Ben, I think more importantly, philosophically, it didn't make much sense to have Jordan Davis on the field anyways. If they're going to throw the ball 50 times a game or 50 times today, and that's what they're going to do, they're going to be dropping back. Well, we need to put pressure on the quarterback and quickly. And as great as Jordan Davis is, as long as he's going to play on Sundays, he's not going to make hundreds of $1 million in the NFL for his ability to rush the pass. That's not what he's going to do. He's going to make money in the NFL off of his ability to control the line of scrimmage in the run game. And I think they ran it, 19, 20, 23 times on Saturday? I mean, they didn't run it a ton. That's why he wasn't on the field a bunch. And even when they were running the ball, Ben, they were running the ball in obvious situations. I thought a lot of the time on 1st and 2nd down, Bama was ready to throw the football. They were throwing the football on 1st down and utilizing the fact that Jordan Davis was on the field. If he's on the field, I'm not going to run at him. I'm going to throw away from him. It made sense. It was a great game plan. They basically neutralized him from the start.
Offensively, Stetson Bennett had some good moments, had some not so good moments. Obviously, and then you read the messages. Georgia fans are obviously saying, "Well, JT Daniels standing over there." They made reference to it on the television broadcast. He's standing there, didn't go in. I know Kirby said, "I'm standing by my guy." I mean, what's the dilemma on the offensive side heading into the playoffs? Because we talked about it, Brooks. You're going to have 3 weeks off until the bowl game or until the playoff game. If JT Daniels starts, it's going to be a month and a half since he played a meaningful snap against a competition that was close.
Yeah, it's going to be basically, I mean, he hadn't started since Vanderbilt, which was in, I think, early October. So it's been a long time since JT Daniels has been out there and getting after it. But I think more importantly, the thing to me is that, and I'm going to talk a lot about this on my show tonight, and I'll tease it a little bit here. Alabama has a 14-game, sample size, 11 college football playoff appearances, and 3 SEC title games over the last 7 years of college football. In all 14 of those games, their opponent has had to throw the ball more than 30 times. Georgia went through a regular season this year where they had this offensive game plan that our quarterback, and we can win by 30 with our quarterback only throwing the ball 20 times. Well, guess what? When you play Alabama in December, when you play Alabama in January, history says they're not going to allow you to have that type of football game. So when Stetson Bennett had to throw the ball 48 times Saturday, Yeah, he turned it over a couple of times, and your offense went stagnant in the red zone several times because you couldn't run the ball. And now you were in a position where you were having to score in bunches and score quickly and actually have an explosive offense that, guess what? You never asked or demanded upon yourself for 12 weeks of the regular season up until that point. So the one moment you did have to score in bunches and have to score quickly and throw the ball down the field, you couldn't because you hadn't been doing it. You can't do something you hadn't been trying to do for a whole entire season. It's impossible.
You know about Bowers. You know the type of player he is and the type of player he's been for this offense. I think the George Pickens coming in and him having a big catch on the sideline and McConkey. Those are three guys that's really all the production you had. When you look at Georgia's receiving core, who is that guy that can separate, for a guy like Stetson Bennett? Because let's face it, you tell me going up against the Alabama defense, you're gonna give me a freshman. You're gonna give me a freshman tight end, a guy that was a walk-on 2 years prior, McConkey, and a guy who hasn't played all year. That's gonna be my offense, and you still stay in the game. I give Stetson Bennett all the credit in the world because let's face it, just like I know, Brooks, that's a lot to ask on a guy when you got guys around him that's supposed to be protecting him.
I mean, that's fair, Ben, but I mean, we've watched the last handful of national title winners, right, with really, really special quarterback play. They weren't always throwing to wide open guys. Offensive coordinators weren't always winning, right? A lot of that was Bryce Young on Saturday making elite tight window throws. Those guys weren't running wide open for 4 quarters. That was the quarterback beating you. They have been beaten by great quarterback play the last 2 times they've gotten to the SEC championship game, and it almost looked daggum near identical. Joe Burrow and Bryce Young sliced them up in almost identical fashions, extending plays with their legs, stepping up in the pocket, driving the ball downfield, hitting tight window throws to elite targets. I mean, that's what the recipe has been for success in college football. If the last, 5 years, this isn't something we're waking up new to. I mean, this has been here. This has been here and been the recipe for success. Meanwhile, Georgia walked through a 12-game slate, which they knew they were going to handle outside of Clemson, walked through a 12-game slate, averaging throwing the ball 24 times a game, knowing good and daggum well that they were going to have to throw it at least 30-plus times to beat Alabama. That's what history says, and it didn't happen because you hadn't done it.
Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily and SI joining us here on 3 and Out. So, Brooks, obviously you now have 3 weeks to get ready for Michigan.
Yeah.
Where's kind of the mental state of this team? I know Kirby has said, hey, pressures are privilege, all that. I mean, it's 12-0. You haven't really been tested by pretty much anybody you've played. Now you were there and, hey, we're going to crest the mountain. It's our time. And you didn't do it. Where's kind of the mental state of the program?
When you are winning at a success rate like they were and you're on, cloud 9 or whatever, it's kind of hard to come in every single day and get coached hard, right? I mean, they're still 19, 20-year-old kids, and they read their social media feed that's been telling them they're the greatest thing ever. And then they get humbled pretty bad by Alabama. So I do believe Kirby Smart when he says his players are sponges around the building right now. That's true. They're going to have some time off this week to both physically and mentally recoup, and then they'll come back Saturday and they'll get back after it. And start preparing for a Michigan football team. By the way, guys, that I think there's 2 ways to beat Georgia. Make them one-dimensional and make them try to throw the football right now. But the other way to beat them is turn this sucker into a rock fight like Clemson did. If you can make this a 10-3, 10-6 football game, then you got a chance to beat them as well. And by God, Michigan can do that. They run the football really, really well. And guess what they do? They get after the quarterback and control the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football as well. So if you look up in the 3rd quarter of this Orange Bowl, and it's 10-7, don't be shocked because this team will and can force Georgia into a rock fight.
Brooks, there was a George Pickens sighting. I was happy to see him back out there. And obviously they told JT, look, only throw it to him if it's one-on-one. He went up and made a 50-50 catch. As Kevin mentioned, 3 weeks off. You ain't got but maybe 1, maybe 2, games left in this season. Do they turn him loose in this playoff game?
Ben, I don't think that's their decision. I don't. Like I know it's fugazi and frowned upon to talk about management and people's others' decisions outside of the football player in and of himself. And this is still collegiate sports, and this isn't professional. Whatever. He's got $1 million decisions lying on his knee right now. And there's a lot of people that go into that decision-making process that aren't wearing a Power G logo on their left side of their chest, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brooks, before we let you go, just your initial thoughts on, you kind of mentioned a little bit with the rock fight, but your initial thoughts on Michigan, because it seems like the national conversation is get ready for Georgia Bama Part 2, and we haven't played the other 2 games yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. Again, I think you're looking at a Michigan football team that is not only going to show up and be prepared. There's a lot of NFL guys and a lot of NFL minds on that coaching staff. But you also got a fan base that's been starving for this in Michigan. Like Georgia fans are starving. The Michigan Wolverine fans haven't had national level success since what, 2004, 2005. So you're going to have a fan base that shows up ready to rock, and a football team that's going to be well prepared and ready to go too. And like I said, man, they've got an offense and defensive line that looks like an SEC football team. They do. They got 2 first-round draft picks playing defensive end. These are not. This is not some Big Ten team coming down here that don't know how to play football. This is a really, really good Michigan team that beat up and banged on an Ohio State team that schematically and roster-wise looks a whole lot like these SEC teams we're talking about in terms of talent level.
Brooks Austin, Dogs Daily on SI, our guest here on 3 and Out. Brooks, appreciate the time as always. Thanks much.
Yeah, man. We'll see you.
Appreciate it. Brooks Austin joining us here on 3 and Out. And then we'll talk more about that, obviously, coming up a little bit later in the show. But obviously, it's Georgia and Michigan. And it seems like the early talking points nationally are we're waiting on Georgia Bama Part 2. Michigan, pretty good team. How do you kind of see that matchup 3 weeks out?
Michigan gonna have to they're gonna have to force Georgia to play ugly. Michigan cannot deal with a back and forth game. They cannot deal with if Georgia can find a way to throw the football consistently on first or second down, or maybe on third down, they got a chance to blow this Michigan team out. But like Brooks said, if this is the one thing that Big Ten football is, it is slow, it is ugly. They want to run the football. That it's that old school football. But I will say this: the one thing Michigan have. They got offensive lineman that's built for this type of defensive line. I don't know about these linebackers because I don't know, but nobody can stop Georgia's linebackers. But they got some meaty guys. Them cornbread fed dudes up there in Michigan. They go to Michigan to play football. So the Jordan Davises of the world, they're gonna be looking forward to going up against them. But if Georgia can make Michigan play a game they're not used to playing, that up and down, playing on the outside, they got a chance to make it a game. But they try to go, man on man football. That's what Michigan do all game. And like you said, Kevin, if you could beat Ohio State, you could beat anybody, and they finally got over the hump. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a better game than people give it credit for.
Yeah, we got 3 weeks to talk about that one. Bowl season starts a week from Friday, so a lot of folks getting ready for that postseason football right around the corner. We've got so much to get to here on 3 and Out. Take 3 around the corner. Arthur Lynch will join us, former Georgia tight end, in the final hour. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to be back here with you on 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. We'll take 3 right around the corner. We'll look at the SEC championship game and how does Georgia bounce back from that. Also, just coaching changes galore around college football. Speaking of that, Ben, some hires made this weekend. Again, congratulations to our guy Sean Quinn, officially hired by Virginia Tech there over the weekend. So the Hokies making that official, that Sean Quinn going to be there in Blacksburg, and a couple of offensive coordinator hires here in this state. Georgia Southern has hired Brian Ellis as their offensive coordinator. Benny came from Western Kentucky. I believe they were in the top 10 of total offense this year in college football. Georgia Tech hired Chip Long as the offensive coordinator. He comes from Tulane. Tulane did not have a great year record-wise, 2-10, but their offense was a little better than Georgia Tech's, and he has a larger resume of time at Notre Dame. I think they had one of the top 10 or 15 offenses in the country when he was at Notre Dame. So a couple of key offensive coordinator hires there at Georgia Southern and Georgia Tech here the last day or two.
I mean, I think the question has been answered, Kevin, when you talk about what Georgia Southern's going to go to. I mean, you think about Brian Ellis is coming in because they finna air it out. I don't know if it's going to be the air raid, but they're going to definitely air it out because I think it makes recruiting a lot easier when you recruit. The best way to recruit is to all be recruiting the same type of athlete in the conference, not trying to recruit a certain type of athlete when you're trying to run a total different type of offense. You talk about Georgia Tech, going out there and getting Chip Long. I mean, at the end of the day, Kevin, you want to be able to have a guy that's going to come in and be more balanced. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs has obviously moved on to greener pastures, but you don't want to let those type of players come, leave, elite programs like Georgia Tech. And obviously, I mean, you think about Sean Quinn. I mean, couldn't happen to a better dude. I mean, 4 years at Savannah State, never ever complained, never ever said anything bad, about the university. Did it the right way, and once again, great man, but still got it done on the field. It's not like they did not win; they won on the field. So much so they made sure when it came time to vote those teams in, teams didn't want nothing to do with them boys from Savannah. But shout out to Sean Quinn and obviously Georgia Southern going to the air raid and a big time offensive coordinator hire for them Georgia Tech boys.
Certainly, and you want to talk about how is Georgia Southern's offense going to change? Ben, you might ask. If you're an Eagles fan, I will give all the credit to Christian Gokel here for looking this thing up. Georgia Southern's career receptions leader is Raja Andrews. Had 127 receptions in his career at Georgia Southern. That's the most they've ever had at Georgia Southern. Manny Sharp had 1,854 receiving yards in a career. That is the career pass catching record at Georgia Southern. So you have the 127 career receptions, 1,854 yards. Those are career highs for what anybody has ever done at Georgia Southern. This year at Western Kentucky, the leader this year in receptions had 137 receptions and 1,718 yards. That would, in 1 year, put him first and second all-time Georgia Southern based off 1 year's production. So you think they're going to throw it around? Oh, they're going to throw the ball around and put the ball in the hands of their playmakers.
Hey, at the end of the day, Kevin, I mean, I'm not saying, look, I had to get used to a different offense at Georgia Tech when it was so successful for them all those years. Got to get used to a different offense in Statesboro. And Kevin, it's only going to make the game better. I mean, people be saying, "Oh man, it's not going to work." Give it time because athletes aren't built to just run a certain type of offense. Everybody's going to the spread, so they're going to. And I think they're going to make Georgia Southern even more dangerous. New coach, new offense, new era. Jared Binko, man. Me and Kevin still coming to the crib to taste out. You know what I'm saying? You on the grill, always showing off on the grill. We're going to take you up on that.
I saw Jared Binko was doing beef jerky or something on the grill.
Jared
Binko, I was like,
listen, it better be good, Kevin. Because he doesn't, listen, it ain't Lincoln. Listen, listen to the Lincoln Riley fans. Please don't let him go out there cooking nothing when he out there in USC. But no,
when you're making jerky, it is supposed to be dehydrated.
Yes,
unfortunately, Lincoln Riley was making brisket. And it was also dehydrated.
Everything isn't meant to send out on social media because your wife telling you, "Oh, that look good." No, that's called. You know, we shouldn't patronize each other. And brisket should look like brisket. It sure as hell should taste like it. I don't want to taste none of Lincoln Riley's brisket because I don't know what that was, Kevin.
Yeah, my standard take, and I've done some food eating competitions, not food eating, but judging competitions. You see people taking photos of their food all the time on Instagram and Facebook and all that. And my standard go-to take is no matter what this tastes like, somebody out there thinks this is the best stuff they've ever had. I'm just saying.
It is true.
But I'm saying, like, I made my grandmama's chili recipe. Yikes!
Exactly.
Somebody out there thinks it tastes good. So.
And listen, and your grandma ought to be ashamed because I guarantee you when grandma made it, it ain't taste like that. But I mean, I will say this, Kevin, as we get older, we get very, very complex. We get very, very like set on our ways and we think our stuff is the best stuff. No, the best stuff is from blind taste testers, not people who share your last name or your bloodline who, want you to invite them back to the Christmas dinner the next year to the barbecue. Lincoln Riley, the fact that you make as much money as you make, that's a shame that you put that out there like that.
Lincoln Riley, you can eat. Just stay away from the grill.
Kevin goes to the barbecue and who comes out from behind the grill? Lincoln Riley.
I'm just saying.
I'm not hungry.
I'm just saying, if I'm at a cooking competition and Lincoln Riley's on my left and Jared Binko's on my right, what's up, Jared? We're gonna hang out over here. I'm just saying. He knows how to get it done. We'll come back. We'll take 3 right around the corner. We'll look at the SEC championship game and more. A lot of coaching changes, a lot of people in the transfer portal. What does it all mean? We'll get to that next. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. Hour number 2, 3 and out. He is Ben Troop. I am Kevin Thomas. Glad to have you along here on this Monday. We'll recap the SEC Championship game. We'll get to your phone calls, 912-342-7184, 912-342-7184, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook, Twitter at Pigskin Radio, or YouTube page. We're streaming live as well on ESPNCoastal.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as the radio network. Good to have you along here in hour number 2. Let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, Ben, we talked a little bit about it with Brooks Austin, but take 1. How would you handle the Georgia quarterback situation heading into the college football playoffs?
I'm going to keep it simple. Who got me here? I think too often at times, Kevin, we look at, we compare things to Alabama. Well, Nick Saban, he benched Jalen Hurts for Tua. Tua was a better thrower of the football than Jalen. Jalen was kind of gun-shy. He wasn't playing well. Now, it's easy to look at the end result of what happened against Alabama and say Stetson Bennett's not the guy. Where would this Georgia team be, not just in 2021, but in 2020 without Stetson? I mean, who was manning the ship when JT Daniels was hurt? And Kevin, something I talked to BJ about over the weekend. Outside of Mississippi State, what game did JT Daniels play to make you go, oh my God? Like his debut against Mississippi State, oh, here it comes, and then he kind of cooled off a little bit. So for me, if you do go to JT Daniels, Kevin, it will only make it look like you're trying to save face to try to win the game. But if JT Daniels ain't better than Stetson Bennett right now, he's not gonna get better than him in 3 weeks. It's just not gonna happen. So I can understand, Kevin, if they do it. But for me, listen, if you're gonna win with Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean and Bowers and those guys, win with Stetson Bennett, man. I told you all the time. Overthinking loses more football games than game plans ever will.
Well, and Ben, I think we mentioned this right around the time of the Florida game. If you were going to go back to JT Daniels, there was a time to do that. And you still had time to get him game reps. As we talked with Brooks Austin, he last started against Vanderbilt, which was early October. And again, that is an SEC game, but it's Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt didn't win a game in the league. So when he has played, it's been in the backup role. He came in, obviously, against Georgia Tech, who was inept. He came in against Charleston Southern, who was FCS school. That's not getting you ready to take on Michigan or an Alabama again. And so you look at it and say, all right, my options are Stetson Bennett, who played inconsistent. Or I can go with JT Daniels, who on a pure talent standpoint may be better. Also hasn't played really in 2 months against a team that mattered, or even in a situation that mattered. And what was JT Daniels' kind of 2020 narrative been? One really good game, one kind of game you go, eh. One good game, one kind of game you go, I mean, he was okay.
I don't want to hear about a flash.
So I think you look at it and say, if you're Kirby Smart, it's who gives me the best chance to win. And I just knowing football coaches, and Ben, football coaches way more intimately than I do, having been on the team. But knowing football coaches as I do, I don't think many guys are going to look at the program and say, in the biggest game of the year, I'm going to put a guy out there who hasn't started in half a season, not played a game on the line snap, maybe all season. I guess you could say the same for Stetson, the way they made him. But anyway, you haven't played a really meaningful snap in a couple of months. And I'm going to put him out there cold in the first round of playoff against a Michigan team that's looking to eat. You might be asking for a similar result from your quarterback. So I think Kirby's in a tight spot. I think you start with Stetson Bennett, and if it's me, I start with Stetson Bennett and say, look, Stetson, it's win or go home time, baby. It's like, we need you to play peak game. And if you don't, well, we're going to put JT in there. And I know people say, well, why wouldn't you do that in the championship game? There may have been a reason he didn't that we're not privy to, but I would certainly go in with that strategy and say, look, it's win or go home, Stetson. If we can't get off to a rough start, if we get behind, like you were against Alabama, but if you get behind and you turn the ball over, can't have that. We're going to have to go with somebody else. To me, that's how I would play it. I would stick with Stetson and say, listen, this is different. This isn't week 12 against Georgia Tech. This isn't even the SEC championship game. This is the college football playoffs. And the margin for error to win one of these things is very slim. And I believe that's how I would handle it.
Yeah,
I would just be honest.
Look,
it's like, and again, I don't think that's disrespectful. How do we treat baseball pitchers in Major League Baseball playoffs? Hey, you've been my ace all year, but this is game 6.
Oh, yeah.
You give up a couple of hits, a couple of runs, you're out. We're going to bring somebody else in.
No. The three words in sports that will always reign supreme. Make them understand. And you don't, and nobody outside of their room is what you said, Kevin. It's like this. Look, man, they're gonna hit you with, you a teammate, right? You a team player, right? So you're gonna do what's best for the team. That's the thing, though. If it were the other way around, though, Kevin, if JT got you here, there would be no problem. Because this always goes back to when Stetson was instituted as being the starter, right? It's, man, he's not that big. Well, he ain't never been big. Man, he's not that tall. He ain't never been that tall. But go back to Georgia high school football record. He lit it up. Go back to the fact that he grew up wanting to be a Georgia Bulldog. So let me get this straight. Genetics is what's holding him back? Come on, man. And think about some of the plays that Stetson Bennett made with his feet to to extend plays on set. JT Daniels wasn't going to be doing that. So, Kevin, I will say this. Because of the situation, Kirby Smart about to make the biggest coaching decision of his life. And I'm not talking about going for it on 4th and 1. I'm talking about because this is the thing. How bad does Stetson have to play for you to pull him? That's the thing. Because at least in the national championship, Jalen wasn't doing anything. And Nick Saban is Nick Saban for a reason. Everybody would have if he lost to Georgia, it would have been because he pulled his starter. But what happens if he wins? So we'll see what happens. But I think that's gonna be the talking point, Kevin, which has really been the talking point all year with Stetson and JT.
All right, moving along, take 2. In the wacky world of college football, where literally any and everything has happened, is deemed acceptable, was Manny Diaz done wrong by Miami?
Yes and no. Yes, because Kevin, we live in an age now to where, the Twitter sphere, it was going crazy talking about what was going on with Miami. Nothing is a secret anymore. So the fact that this goes back to the Brian Kelly at LSU and Lincoln Riley at USC, you didn't hear anything about it, and that is unheard of. Yes, it is messed up because Manny Diaz was out there recruiting for Miami. Why? Because he was the head coach. Guess who else was out there recruiting? His staff was out there recruiting. Why? Because they're employed. Yet Mario Cristobal they was negotiating with him. Now, the reason why I say yes is messed up, because they was out there negotiating with the man while they currently had a coach. No, because of this reason. Kevin, something you brought up. Remember Temple and Manny Diaz? Me either. Manny Diaz was supposed to be the head coach of Temple, did a press conference, picked up his jacket, left the Temple jacket, he picked up his coat, and got back on the plane. He flew in on Temple's private plane and flew back out on Miami's. So, no, because, Kevin, the people that run college football are the people you never see. Presidents, chancellors, board of directors, board of trustees, boosters. Everybody was making big splashes, right? Florida, LSU, USC. Hey, man, Notre Dame. We want to get one of those. And what is the easy thing to do? You would think Coach Frost in Nebraska would have people staying away from former players trying to come back and resurrect the team. No, let's get Mario Cristobal. He was a good player when he was here. Okay. And he also got the hell beat out of him by Utah. Twice in the same season. So I would say, Kevin, no, because, Kevin, just like I know. Listen, capitalism, people, is big time in college football. And if you got the money to get them, go out there and get them. Cristobal can't turn down. Let's see. Eugene, Miami. That's not a hard choice. People vacation in one spot and they go to the Nike Corporation in the other spot. Get out of here. Yes. So no, Kevin, they didn't do him wrong, because if you can use Miami to be a stepping stone when Temple thought you was going to be their coach, don't feel bad when you out there recruiting for Miami. And breaking news, Mario Cristobal. What does he say when you're in the home recruit for Miami and Mario Cristobal just became the dude? He say, good luck in the fall? Yeah. Jesus.
I think it's bad form on Miami. Do I feel bad for Manny Diaz? No, because that's the nature of the coaching business. And again, as you said, he was the Temple coach, Ben, I believe, for like 3 days.
Yes.
He was the Temple coach for 3 days and turned around and left and took the Miami job. So I will say bad form on Miami, where you are actively negotiating to hire another coach and haven't had the decency to fire the one that's already there. And the way it kind of played out, Ben, to make it even worse, was Miami's waiting to see if Cristobal says yes. If he doesn't, then Manny Diaz is our guy.
The new age. I mean, what does Manny Diaz say to his wife? We're gonna be in Miami, right? I mean, it just depends on how Mario feels.
Yeah.
Who's Mario?
Yeah.
Oh, he's out there in Oregon right now.
I just think that's bad focus. How do you go back and say, hey, we're negotiating with Mario Cristobal?
Oh no,
he said no. Hey, man, he never been happier to see you,
if
man.
I'm Mario Cristobal, when he goes and just be subpar at Miami, he should already know. Am I still the coach? Did your key work this morning? My key did work, but I don't know if they're gonna have me back. But like I know Kevin. Since Miami has been in the ACC, they've been to one ACC championship game. One.
Yep.
Come on, man. They're not going to get back to what they used to be.
Should have been to 2, but self-imposed sanctions on themselves one year and they didn't get to go. So there is that. Moving along, take 3. What team, Ben, out of the playoffs would have the best chance to win if we had an expanded playoff field? A lot of talk about whether it be an 8 or a 12, and people say, man, we barely got 4 this year.
Mm-hmm.
What team that's not in the playoffs would have the best chance to win if we did have, say, a 12-team format?
Wow. I'm going to give you 2 teams. I'm going to give you 2. One is Ohio State. They got a high-powered offense, and you look at the season they had. I know they lost big time to Michigan, and they just had, and obviously lost to Oregon, during the regular season. So Michigan finally got over the hump, but I still think 3 dynamic receivers, a dynamic quarterback, and C.J. Stroud, Chris Olave, and those guys. They will have a chance to go out there and really get it done. Another team, I'm sorry, Ole Miss. Let me tell y'all something. Ole Miss have to run through the gauntlet of the SEC West, right? They got certain things you need. They got a big-time quarterback, check. They got an offense that can put up points. And as long as they can score points, they find a way to be in it. I think Ole Miss would have had an outside shot, Kevin, because they wouldn't have had to play in the SEC championship game. So that's one less game they had to worry about, and they still got in, right? And then, I mean, whenever you can compete with Alabama, you ain't gonna always beat them. But if I can stay on the same field with Alabama for 4 quarters, I can stay on the field with anybody. So give me Ole Miss 1. Give me Ohio State 1, maybe an Ole Miss 2.
Yeah, and Ole Miss, I think, was, 8? So they would have been in even if we had an 8-team playoff for. That's a good one. I did not think about that. I'm sitting there thinking, would an Oklahoma State or how would a Baylor do?
Maybe Oklahoma.
If they were there, but you're right. The best option is Ohio State because they were a really good team who happen to have 2 very just tough losses on their schedule. And they would be one that if they got that reprieve and got back in, I think that would be a team I think nobody would want to play. I really do. I think people say, you want to play Alabama? I really don't want to play Ohio State. Might rather play Alabama than Ohio State.
That moniker of we want Alabama. Listen, let me tell y'all something. And I got to say this too, because if we're going back and forth on social media, no one was talking about Georgia, the team losing, right? We're talking about the fan base. We need to keep things in perspective. Georgia is one of the best teams out there. So when Georgia loses and other fan base get to talking trash, that is fans talking to fans. You're not talking to Kirby. You're not talking to Jordan Davis. You're not talking to Stetson Bennett. So if you can dish it in Georgia, y'all know y'all been dishing it hard in 2021. Kevin, you know just like I know, there are 2 things you want in this life when you're a college football fan. 1, to see your team lose, and 2, and it might be 1, to see your rival lose. To see your team win and to see your rival lose. So I understand that. When we talk about rivals, we're talking about more the fan base because no place has the fan base to get to dwell more than on the Twitter sphere. And my God help me, I might have more Georgia people follow me than Florida people, so I'm gonna have to get them followers up. But I just want to clear that up. I am not talking trash to any collegiate athlete, male or female, because I know how hard it is. But I'm a fan now, and I can talk that big stuff. So come at me. And yes, Florida did lose to Georgia, and I'm gonna talk trash because it's Georgia. Not that I lose or have lost any respect for Georgia, man. They're one of the best teams out there getting it done. Because Kevin, if Georgia would have won, it would have been just Kevin and Cam on 3 and out today. It probably would have been.
No,
just man, I would have still. I was just. But shout out to them Georgia Bulldogs, man, Kevin. You know they find a way to get it done.
We got more to come here. It's 3 now. That's take 3. We do it every day at this time. We'll come back. We'll look back at the SEC championship game. What did we learn in that SEC championship game that plays forward into the college football playoffs? We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin and Ben here with you on this Monday. Arthur Lynch, former Georgia Bulldog tight end, will join us coming up at the top of the final hour. So looking forward to that. 912-342-7184, 912-342-7184. We can take your phone calls here on 3 and Out. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to William. William, welcome to 3 and Out. How are you?
I'm doing great. You guys sound like you're having a pretty good day.
And we always have fun here on the show.
Yeah, I can tell. I just have an observation about the game Saturday evening. It's Stetson's numbers, and maybe he didn't have a stellar performance, but they weren't all that bad. But it seems like we're overlooking the fact that vaunted Georgia defense got had.
Yeah. I think that was actually appreciate the phone call, William. I think that was the first thing I was actually going to ask Ben about right here. I was like, did we see the Georgia defense exposed in that SEC championship game? And I think maybe a little bit. We were kind of talking about before the show. You look at who kind of Georgia has played. Clemson was a tough team at the beginning of the year. Outside of that, did they play a really dynamic offense that had the offensive line that could go with the skill players that they could play? I think Georgia's best win that they've had to date would be Kentucky. Kentucky finished 9-3. I did a little quick check on Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky in their 9 wins had a win over anybody better than 6-6. So they kind of feasted on some weaker opponents there as well. And Kentucky and everybody's game plan for the most part against Georgia has been, oh my God, they're going to blow us out 48-0. We're going to run the ball and hope they can keep the score close. And so I don't think we hadn't seen a team that had the ability to do it with the quarterback to do it, to throw on that Georgia defense and protect long enough that Alabama had, and they were able to do it on Saturday.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising that Georgia couldn't get in there with the way Auburn was just eating him up. Of course, rivalry days are always different, but I was a little. I just felt like they didn't bring the A game.
Yeah, again, it's something that I think they're going to have to figure out as they head forward to the championship. Appreciate the phone call, William. Thanks so much. And Ben, to that end, talk about that Georgia defense, because again, that was going to be my first question to you here: was did they get exposed, or was it just a good offense had a good day against? And again, because they had given up nothing all year long and gave up more offense for Bryce Young passing than we'd seen ever in the history of the SEC championship game. Now, that being said, the passing record has been broken 3 years in a row, so that's just what it is. But nevertheless, the all-time defense, who was going to be, in terms of points allowed, yardage, one of the best we'd seen of the last 2-3 decades, gave up more passing yards than anybody's ever allowed in the SEC championship game.
I would say yes, they did get exposed. It was a case of a great offense. I think, Kevin, too often at times the one thing we didn't do as much as we've done over the years is really take a close look at Alabama because of what Georgia was doing. And let me say this again: what Georgia's defense was doing. Georgia's defense is still one of the greatest ever. They didn't give up over 90 points all season. So when going into this game, I get my best BJ Bennett impression. That a market correction was coming. And the one thing we kept saying, Kevin, was if the defense doesn't have an A game, can the offense help out the defense? And the answer is no. Because what happens is if I'm on a dominant baseball team that you can't hit off my pitcher, and just say I play center field, man, all this dude is, listen, either he throws strikeouts, either he strike you out, or he's guys hitting grounders. All of a sudden, I'm out there, boom. It's not that I was out of position. I'm not used to it. I'm not used to guys even hitting flyouts on this guy. What happens is if you are in that Georgia offense, your confidence came because of Jordan Davis and N'Kobe Dean and those guys. They don't give up. N'Kobe Dean is a Butkus Award winner. Like, I don't even know if this is something new. I thought you used to have to go to the College Football Awards. Don't bump that. He is the winner. Like, they announced it after the game. But what happens is, Kevin, fatigue. The blitz not getting there. And Roman Harper, former Alabama, Crimson Tide, and now on the SC Network, played a lot of years with the Saints and the Colts. He's on SC Network. He said that there really isn't anything dynamic about Georgia's defensive line and their blitzing. It's just the fact that they're forcing quarterbacks to get off their spot quicker because they're forcing him to have happy feet. He said, you know what happened Saturday? The blitz didn't get there. And that is what happens. When people go, hey, man, give me an elite quarterback, some elite receivers, and time, what happens? I will set the record for most passing yards in the SEC championship game. I will have my Heisman Trophy moment in the first, second, third quarter, pick a quarter. And he had it in. And Kevin, you just exposed the fact that Dan Lanning and that defense is incredible. But when they can't do what they do, because the one thing that got exposed was the secondary. See, I didn't know how good the secondary was because they're not throwing the ball on the games is over. I mean, you don't know how good the secondary is when the game is already 35-0 and obviously got to throw the ball to try to make the game look interesting. But yes, Kevin, what got exposed was Jordan Davis is a run stopper, not a pass rusher. Nakobe Dean is a run stopper. He's not a pass covering linebacker. And what happened was they kept their core, they kept their base 11 on the field. And Bryce Young said, look, man, y'all think that we scared of y'all? We respect y'all. But what is it about Georgia that scares Alabama? They beat them handily. They beat them switching quarterbacks. They beat them switching quarterbacks in the national. Matter of fact, they beat them switching quarterbacks in the national championship to then go back to the original quarterback in the SEC championship game the next year. So they've seen it all and done it all. But yes, Kevin, Georgia got exposed from being on the field too much, not being able to win on those pass. Because the thing about Georgia, as great as our defense, they don't got a lot of sacks. People think I think they lead in sackers like 5.5 sacks, right? So, and I think Adam Anderson, who's no longer with the team, I think he's tied for first on the team with 5.5 sacks. So I think what happens is, Kevin, when that defense is on, it's on. But when you got a bunch of guys in red and black being stood up by those guys in crimson, and they just, if defensive line looking to end the balls in there, that's not good. That means you didn't win your one-on-one pass rush. So secondary got exposed. The defense showed, I said this. The defense, I said, hey, Alabama's going to ask Georgia, can you blush? Can you flinch? Georgia flinched. And I said Alabama's job was to expose Georgia's weakness. Who would have ever thought it would have been what they do? Like, hey, man, because they're going to do what they do. We're going to pick up that blitz. We're going to go one-on-one on the outside with our tackles. We're going to slide that line. We're going to neutralize that monster in the middle named Jordan Davis. And 420-something passing yards later, we have won the SEC championship game, going from number 3 to number. It was a performance for the ages, Kevin, and coming from a guy who watched Mac Jones and those boys do it to my Florida Gators last year. When Alabama's offense is on, it's like there's 30 of them out there.
And again, I think you look at that. I think obviously there were questions about Stetson. You said earlier in the show, hey, he could have thrown 4 picks, maybe 5 picks, and coulda, shoulda, he didn't. But I mean, there were opportunities where he threw poor footballs. What if you're Georgia, are you looking at right now with your quarterback situation? We kind of asked that in take 3, but you got a month, 3 weeks to get ready for Michigan. And that is a team that is also kind of they're on the Georgia track from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Honestly, I know Harbaugh's been around longer, but they're on the Georgia track where Kirby Smart was when he first took over the Georgia program. That's where Michigan is now. Like, hey, get us there and now get in the playoff and let's try to do something. And we want to climb. So it's kind of interesting to see these two teams on their track. But if you're talking about the quarterback situation, what are you looking at here with 3 weeks to prepare, knowing that if for whatever reason Michigan's able to do what Alabama did, and I don't know if they're going to score as much, but if Michigan's just able to move the football, if Michigan is able to take a ball from the 20 to the opposing 40 or the 35 and punch you deep, that could be a win. If we got to play 80, 90 plays on defense, which they hardly ever had to do all season long, how does our offense respond? What are you talking about here if you're Coach Monken with 3 weeks to go, knowing that you got a quarterback that can make some plays, you might have to live with a bad play, and if you go with the backup, it's a guy who hasn't played significant snaps in 2 months.
I would say, Kevin, for me, I'm not a firm believer in drastic changes because we got exposed. You know what got exposed on offense? Outside of Bowers. I'm being honest, outside of Bowers, who do you have that hurts you on the perimeter? The running game for Georgia has been obsolete. Like, they haven't had guys that just take over games like Tony Michel, like Nick Chubbs of the world. So, you got McConkey and those guys. I mean, you got George Pickens. So George Pickens is the guy that made one play. They got him out because they don't want to hurt him. McConkey is a guy that made a big play on the screen. And obviously Bowers is Bowers. I mean, over 10 catches, like 100 and 40-something, 50 yard, touchdowns. And Darnell Washington made an appearance by Bob Mawson, the guy, when he didn't even have to jump. That's what happened when you got 6'6", 6'7" versus 6 feet. But for me, Kevin, is, hey, man, play football. Like Burton, Garrett Jackson, what's up? Because, Kevin, football is about individual matchups first, playing the scheme second. I got to win my individual matchup. And if you go back to that game, think about something. Stetson Bennett, I said this. I said, Alabama, they're going to see. You're not going to be a dramatically different team coming out of halftime. You're going to make adjustments. You know how that second pick happened for the touchdown? They thought it was going to cover 2, and they got cover 2 robber, and he got picked off for a touchdown. That's scheming. You know why? Because who was he trying to get the ball to? Bowers. And the thing about it, Bowers made a catch in traffic. It was about 3 people around him. Stetson is gonna trust the guy who's been in safety valve all year. So for me, Kevin, is look, JT got a big arm. You know who else had a big arm? I guess I'll say Jacob Eason. Where did he end up? Ends up in Washington. I guess so. This guy got a big arm. And just because you could throw the ball far doesn't mean you're the best player for the team. JT Daniels didn't make it at the team he was at, right? That's how he ended up at Georgia. So stick with Stetson. Tell those guys they got to get better in a hurry. Try to make the best. Listen, George Pickens, you make the best decision for yourself, young man. Even though this is the biggest game of Georgia history, you got a lot of games to play after this. But I think you stick with Stetson, Kevin, because I think if JT plays on Saturday, it's even worse.
Well, then that brings me to my next question, because we mentioned it earlier with Tommy Bowden, with Brooks. So far, the national talking points, and I've listened to, Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. I heard Mike Greenberg talk about, everybody nationally is saying, oh, we're going to see Georgia-Bama again.
Mm-hmm.
So if we expect a rematch, should we expect a different result? If you believe in Kirby Smart, Todd Monken, and Dan Lanning's ability to make adjustments, if they play again, should we expect a different result?
Nope. Because are you going to have different players? John Mechie might not be out there, but think about this. You know what Alabama, you know what Alabama gained more of coming out of the game they had going in? Confidence. Because make no mistake about it, Kevin, I mean, this is a new crew. Bryce Young is about to do something to Alabama that's never been done. And that's not win the SEC championship, that's to win the Heisman. So you replace Mac Jones, you replace Jalen Waddle, you replace Devonta Smith, you replace Najee Harris, and you back in the same position you was in with those guys gone, except now the quarterback is going to win. You're replacing first-round draft picks at receiver. You add Williams, you add Mechie. So, Kevin, it might be a better game. Is Jordan Davis, he gonna develop a pass rush in 3 weeks? That's not what he does. Dan Lanning gonna do what a lot of other people. No. You gave Alabama 1 week to get ready for you this time. Now you're gonna give them 3? And they're gonna be trying to go back.
They would have a week to get ready after the first round. But I understand what you're saying.
I just think for me, Kevin, it is hard to beat a team twice. But the whole thing about it is, right, we're gonna be at SEC Media Days next year. If Alabama plays Georgia twice and they beat them twice, think about what that does to the program of Georgia. Think about what that does to them. Because the last thing you want to see is maybe we've gone as high as we can go. I'm not saying Georgia can't beat Alabama, but it ain't. This is why I say don't look forward. Michigan is literally Georgia in a different color, because they had to get over Ohio State and they did it. You don't think getting over Alabama helps you win the national championship? Ask 2019 LSU what it does. And I think that for me, if you could beat Alabama, you could beat anybody. But if you can't beat them, it's that Kevin. It's everybody's going up against a team or a player in your past. You say, dude, it was this one dude I just couldn't get the better of him. That don't mean you ain't elite. But when elite meets elite, something got to give. Because the thing about Michigan, people need to know, Michigan ain't fighting for respect no more. They fighting for supremacy. They've already got respect because they beat Ohio State. Look past Michigan if you want to, with 2 bookend defensive ends, with one of them being picked the number 1. Because you look down the road, Kevin, the next thing you know, people going to be saying, forget what happened in the SEC championship game. What happened against Michigan? If you are one of the last 4 teams standing, you are good enough to beat anybody in it. That's Cincinnati. That's Michigan. So don't look too far down the road, because Stetson Bennett, just imagine when you got 2 defensive ends coming at you, and both of them are bookends. Michigan plays slow Big Ten football, Kevin. But for one game with everything on the line, that's what we're gonna see who's really built for the moment. I think you got 2 teams that's trying to get over the hump, and we'll see who's vying to try to get back to the Natty to play them Crimson Tide boys.
How bad do you want that rematch? You got to show it against Michigan, as you said, first before you get there. We've got more to come here on 3 Downs, a big weekend for coaching changes. Of course, that transfer portal out there as well. We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are making us a part of your day. Ben, it has been quite the coaching carousel, and you've got, 9 days until the early signing period begins. Billy Napier taking over officially at Florida there yesterday after the Sun Belt Championship game. So you got a number of coaches that are coming in, have 10 days, or really now 9 days, to hit the ground running and either recruit or hit that transfer portal and try to find some players relatively quickly. At least at the FBS level, you get a lot of guys who sign 80% of their class here in the early signing period.
The one thing I do know, Kevin, is Billy Napier, who just got introduced for Florida. He's already out there recruiting, and that's the name of the game. I mean, I don't know why Dan Mullen, former Florida Gator head coach, said what he said about we'll talk about recruiting when it's time. No, recruiting is every day. And the one thing, Kevin, that is not talked about either is we hear about the head coaches, assistant coaches, and recruiting. What about the analysts? I wonder if analysts I'm pretty sure if you're on a staff, you can get out there and recruit. But yes, Kevin, that is the lifeblood of every program. And I will say this about the transfer portal. The transfer portal is for young men who made decisions, who said, hey, man, maybe it's not working out. New coaching staff's coming in. Not necessarily because you get to a school and you got to compete for a spot. That's football. So for guys who saying, hey, man, this room is talented. Hello? There's a lot of guys here that can play. Yeah. And don't give me that being it's easy for you to say that I started 1 year in college, that was my senior year. I started 1 year in high school, and that was my senior year. I did not want to play because I wasn't the guy when I first got out there. I stuck with it. So I understand that the transfer portal, Kevin, is for guys, unfortunately, like Jameer Gibbs, who say, look, I think y'all just not utilizing my talent. I love my school, but I want to play. But, when you talk about what's his name, Quinn Ewers, or what I want to say.
Yep.
I mean, the number one recruit in the 2021 class. Listen, missed his senior year of high school because he signed an NIL deal to go to Ohio State. He's in the transfer portal. Let me tell y'all something right now. They're going to ask your former coach what type of player you were, even if you never hit the field. It's not because I want these ideal situations. There is no, you know what an ideal situation is? Free college tuition to play a sport. That is ideal. Well, Ben, there are guys that just want to play. Every guy at a school wants to play. Look at the sideline on college, please. It is littered with players. Ain't but 11 are going to be out there. So don't give me that, my son came here to play, like every other child. So, yes, Kevin, getting back to what you were saying, yes, the coaches got to get out there and recruit, Kevin, because the thing about it is I'd rather have a bunch of room full of 5 stars and have to close my eyes and pick than to hope that the 5-star Georgia pans out and I don't have to go with a guy who is a walk-on who is getting it done. So recruiting is tricky, Kevin. I do think because of teams like Cincinnati, that's going to make more guys not think that I got to go to a certain school to get notoriety or to get the attention. But hey, Kevin, hey, nine days away. We're going to see if those number one recruiting classes stay number one recruiting classes, because you have to win the perception battle. That is the recruiting class before you even start thinking about winning games on the field.
Absolutely. And again, I look at, the transfer portal and guys who are new into bad situations or guys who are on the hot seat, a la Jeff Collins or guys like, how much do you utilize that transfer portal? And you look at it and say, well, what do you mean? How much do you have to coach them up, develop them, coach them up versus, hey, you get a guy that's maybe been in college for 2 years and maybe is closer to being ready. He's still got to learn your scheme, but is closer to being ready to come in and impact right this minute and maybe save your job.
I want those guys right now. Listen, I am not naive, Kevin. At the end of the day, okay, let's just make it to more practical situations. I need my car is broken down, right? I need a mechanic. Now, I would love to go out there and get a young man who just got out of school, went to trade school as a mechanic, but my neighbor is a mechanic for 30 years, self-taught. Didn't have to. I'm gonna go with the guy who has more experience. Not saying that the young man who just graduated can't do it. I want to get the person who, hey, I had to work on cars that didn't have computers and diagnostics attached to the car to let you know what's wrong with the car. I had to go up under the hood and see what's going on with the car. So yes, Kevin, I want a guy that's already developed, because sometimes, Kevin, I want to show these new guys what college football is like. When I got to college as a freshman, we did everything with the freshman guys. We lifting weights, we running, we lifting, we doing practice, and we thinking we doing it. And then the upperclassmen came back. And I was like, we ain't look like that. We don't look like that physically. We ain't moving like that athletically. So sometimes, Kevin, you just showed me a video of a young man doing the coin toss. We thinking, which one of these guys you think is going D1?
Yeah.
And then you couldn't see, then they turned to the side. I'm like, what? And all I'm saying is, people, listen, there are certain cars out there, right? That you don't know nobody that got one, but if one pull up, you go, oh my God, that's what a D1 athlete is. They're rare. It's 25 per school, and I'm sorry, it's what? 2 million kids play high school football. I don't know how many it is.
A lot,
and we're going to break it down to 20. One state can probably fill up every roster in most colleges. So I know that everybody thinks they're D1. But like I said, back in the day, when the Chrysler 300 went to their new style, they said the Chrysler 300 looks just like a Phantom until a Phantom pulled up. And I'm like, wait, exactly. It looks like a Chrysler 300. And that's no shout out to Chrysler 300. I like those cars. But Kevin, just like I know, everybody wants to be that D1 athlete. But as JT Daniels, he thought, hey, man, I'm going to leave USC. I'm going to go to Georgia. And now I can't get I'm not even winning it over a guy that had no stars next to his name.
Yep.
That's college football,
It's crazy. And we'll see how much that transfer portal gets utilized in the next 9 days leading up to that early signing period. We've got more to come here. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We've talked a lot of college football here on the show, Ben, but didn't want to give the Falcons their Monday 5 minutes. They lost again
Okay.
and lost at home. Nick Saban has more wins in Mercedes-Benz this year than the Falcons do.
You know,
Oh,
God.
So the Falcons do have one win at home. Oh, wait, they were the home team in London, so that doesn't necessarily count.
All I'm going to say is this. First goal on the one, come away with 3 points. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Listen, zero creativity. When 10 yards, now, in between the 20s, Kevin, I'm telling you, they'll come up with some plays. I mean, Kyle Pitts will come, he'll run a tight end under, stiff arm a guy run down the sideline, and all of a sudden when they get the 10-yard in, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to get open. Matty I's going to try to find the open guy. It was a Mike Davis sighting yesterday in the end zone. I said, wait a minute, Mike Davis can run that thing? Yeah, Cordell was out there catching passes, running that thing. Kyle Pitts looking good. They lose. You know why? Because I think Godwin might have had 15 catches. Can't guard Mike Evans. He running down. And Gronk, 2 touchdown passes. Gronk wears offensive lineman cleats, and he's still out there getting them. Hey, they still my Falcons. You know, I'm a rock with them, Kevin, because at this point I have to. You know, I'm not gonna jump off the ship. But Jesus, I mean,
like everybody said, don't after they beat Jacksonville, like don't buy in the they're still in the playoff hunt stuff. You got to beat a team that's
I think
won more than 5 games in the last 3 years combined. So I mean, it's just crazy.
The Houston Texans are the only team right now that has been eliminated from the playoffs, and Detroit got their first win of the season. I want y'all to listen. Detroit, I know it's hard to believe, still has an opportunity to make the playoffs, and they are 1-10-1. So, so all I'm saying is, the great, what was it, Brent Musburger, when he said, listen, it pays to be a starting quarterback, just type in Jared Goff, and you'll thank me later. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, Kevin, the Falcons are the Falcons. This is the problem, though, Kevin. They be in the game, and all of a sudden, it just goes downhill. It's just done. So it's Atlanta. Jacksonville lost too, so BJ ain't got nothing to feel good about either. So right now, but if you are looking for an offensive coordinator, Joe Brady is available. He got fired by the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, again, I told you that before the show. You have Joe Brady and Ed Orgeron, both the hottest things going in college football 2 years ago, both now without jobs. How's that for job stability, Ben? Hey, won the national title, record-breaking offense. Man, there's no hotter name in college football than Joe Brady. How he's going to go run that offense for the Carolina Panthers. Cam got 1 game benched. You got Sam Darnold. He hasn't been the answer.
Done.
And now Joe Brady, less than 2 years, a year and 3 quarters, done
Kevin's
as the OC in Carolina. So there you go.
I mean, as I say, the grass isn't green on the other side, ladies and gentlemen. That is AstroTurf. That's not grass at all. So for you, if you are a Joe Brady fan, he will land somewhere, Kevin. With the way they're giving out money these days, I think he needs to go back to college to where he can be the man and not making the headline news for being the only guy fired. When, like I said, Dan Campbell in Detroit, 1 game.
It is 3 and Out, final hour here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, he has been Troop. Glad you're with us here on the program as the SEC Championship over the weekend, Alabama over Georgia. Georgia, though, back in the college football playoffs. They'll have Michigan get by there. Likely, I will get another crack there at Alabama. Joining us here on the program to talk about Georgia and their road forward, former Georgia tight end and fifth-round pick in 2014 by the Miami Dolphins. Arthur Lynch joins us here on 3 and Out. Arthur, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate it. Before we talk to you about the game specifically, talk to us about what you see when you watch Brock Bowers play tight end. He's obviously setting records there for touchdown passes there at Georgia as a tight end. He's just a freshman. What makes him so special?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the thing that sets him apart is his ability to create separation vertically. He really does have some elite top end speed for someone who is that size. My guess is he's probably around a 4'4", 4'5" guy. You know, he's every inch of 6'4". He's 235 pounds. He's very, very lethal with the ball in his hands after the catch. So much so that, you know, I think it's very hard for defenses to gauge how lethal he is. Maybe they do now after watching so much film on him and watching him do it week in and week out. But really, I just think it's his ability to create separation at you know, several levels in the defense, both the linebacker level and the DB level. But at 6'4", 235, when he can run like that, and he's got the ball skills of a wide receiver, you know, it's pretty remarkable that he is the top receiving threat for UGA. And if he continues down this path, you know, I think he'll shatter pretty much every receiving record at UGA, which is saying something. I don't mean just for tight ends. I mean for all receiving records.
And although a guy as young as Bowers, right? I mean, the hardest thing about the SEC is just picking up the game speed, picking up the playbook, and finding a way to go out there and be yourself. Just talk about him just being, you know, just wise beyond his years. I mean, he's obviously the best playmaker on an offense, taking that away from, you know, Pickens and those guys. Just talk about his maturity level, being able to handle these moments and really being, you know, the safety valve for, for Stetson Bennett all season.
Yeah, you know, that's a really good point. You hit the nail on the head. You know, the SEC, it's such a different level of football, both from a physicality standpoint and a football IQ standpoint. For Brock to come in day one and make his impact known pretty early on. I mean, he had a really good game. I think he had 4 or 5 catches in that Clemson game, and really hasn't looked back. And I think that's, you know, there's 3 reasons why that's the case. First, I think it comes down to coaching. I think Coach Monken and Todd Hartley, the tight end coach, has done a really good job of implementing their offense and then developing and maturing the players, to where they can succeed at a high level. I think, the second point is, you know, Brock is obviously a very smart individual. He's a very, highly competitive individual who wants to be great and clearly is great. And I think third also is just the depth of that tight end room specifically, right? You got guys like Fitzpatrick, you got guys like Washington, and then obviously you got the stud in Brock Bowers. My guess is they have a really highly competitive room. They push one another to be great on and off the field. And ultimately, I think when you have that highly competitive environment within a position group, you know, you kind of see it on the defensive side of the ball with Georgia defense. Those guys hold each other accountable. They push each other and they make each other better. I would imagine that the tight end group is very much the same.
Arthur, obviously it didn't go Georgia's way in the SEC championship. What's it going to take, I guess, for them to clear that Alabama hurdle?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I think all of us have a little bit of Alabama fatigue at this point, starting back in 2012 when I was there, you know, and obviously the 4 games since then. You know, we have to realize that they're just another football team. We've played and beaten a lot of good football teams not named Alabama, and there's no reason we can't do the same for them. I do think Georgia, was met with some adversity on Saturday, and their defense has played very, very well, dominantly, really all year long, but they've never had to play from behind, and the offense hasn't really had to play from behind either. And I think we're a little bit flustered. Luckily, we took care of business all year up to that point where we kind of had a mulligan. I know that's not what Georgia fans want to hear, but we knew we were going going to be in the playoff no matter what, barring some really freaky stuff that may have happened that did not happen. So I think ultimately we need to look forward at Michigan and realize that this is a very tough and scary opponent. I think out of all the other teams in college football, Michigan and Georgia are most alike. They're a well-coached, highly physical, disciplined defensive football team. They can run the ball dominantly and they can run the ball effectively, really at will. They're very big up front. They're dominant up front, on both sides of the ball. And I think Georgia's going to have a challenge with them. But ultimately, when you're looking at a team and an opponent, and Alabama just kind of has this little mental hiccup to us now, and you just have to treat every single game like any other opponent. And it's obviously easier said than done. 5 times now, Alabama's beaten us. And it's tough pill to swallow, that's for sure.
And Arthur, even talk about that a little more. We can talk about Michigan. You talk about a team that's about as similar to Georgia as you can get. A team that finally got over the hump, beat Ohio State, winning the Big Ten championship. But now they face a team in Georgia that, outside of the different colors and the location, really, really similar. How hard is it to play a team that mirrors you as much as Michigan does Georgia?
Well, I think the one good thing that our offense will have the experiences, when they go one-on-ones, ones versus ones in practice, and what they've been doing since spring last year, they're going against one of the best defenses, historically in college football, and I'm talking about our own. So I can't imagine Georgia and that offensive side of the football will be intimidated by Michigan's defense. With that being said, I think they know that they're going to play an elite defense in Michigan. And they're going to have to do everything in their power, especially up front, to get some movement, create separation, and move the ball down the field. But at the end of the day, they're going to have 3.5, 4 weeks to prepare for this game. Kirby Smart and his staff is going to do an unbelievable job getting them ready. But you just have to take it one day at a time. Preparation is going to be key. But I would imagine they're going to want to establish the run early on, which is going to be easier said than done against this defensive front. But I think Georgia, the best asset they have is they go against, elite defenders on every single day at practice. And, hopefully that translates to the game. I think it will.
Arthur Lynch joining us here on 3 and Out. And you talk about getting ready for a opponent in Michigan. And it seems like, at least from a national standpoint, everybody's talking about the rematch. How do you put that aside, knowing that that's the team you want to beat, but you still got a huge game? I mean, and again, it's because everybody's talking about Alabama, Georgia, the rematch, Alabama, Georgia, the rematch, and you got to get past a pretty good team standing in the way first.
Yeah, I think that just comes down to coaching and managing the expectations of your team. Focusing your entire efforts on the task at hand. And that task at hand is to beat Michigan, because there is no rematch without beating Michigan, right? And the same could be said for Alabama and Cincinnati. If you're one of the 4 teams that's left playing at this point in the season, you're obviously an elite talent. You're one of the elite football teams in college football, and so I can't imagine that Kirby Smart and his staff is going to have his team, overlooking a Michigan opponent, especially a Michigan opponent that's hungry and out to prove something, because similar to what we experienced at Georgia and Ohio State, they finally got over the hump, and they could have easily had a letdown against Iowa, and they really showed up and put their boot on their throat and left no doubt for the committee and the rest of college football to be like, okay, Michigan's the real deal. I imagine that Georgia wants to have that same kind of like a stamp of approval, especially in the playoffs after the game that they had on Saturday. So I don't think they'll overlook them, but ultimately that is something to be something of a concern, because it is easy to kind of, be chomping at the bit to get another shot at Alabama, but there's no shot at Alabama if you don't take care of business in the semifinal.
And Arthur, even going back to your days at Georgia, to see what Georgia is now, most of the time when you leave your alma mater, you want to see those guys keep going to the next level and the next level. It's got to make you feel good being, a Georgia alum, knowing that even what you guys started, they still trying to take it to the next level and finally be that last team standing, hopefully.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I think anyone that played during, the Rick era or any teammates of mine, we had some pretty good teams, but to kind of see the level of consistency and the amount of talent that Kirby has been able to kind of harbor in Athens is just damn impressive. I know there's guys on the team now where I look in the mirror. I'm like, I don't know if I'd be playing. I would see many snaps if I was there. Especially that tight end room. I might be playing tackler, guard, or center, not so much tight end. So to be able to see the elite level talent that Kirby has got there and harbored that talent, and really, the level of consistency of their play has been pretty pristine and pretty elite. So it makes me proud, right? And they haven't reached the apex of the mountain. They will. I'm confident they will. But they just got to take it one game at a time, one day at a time, and hopefully this is the year they win a national championship. And if it's not the year, I would imagine that Kirby's going to be the guy to get them there. It's just gonna, you got to show up with your hard hat every day and go to work.
Now, Arthur, man, I mean, if this is the year that Georgia finally exercised a lot of demons, they get to the national championship, whether it be Alabama. Obviously, we want it, because of the drama, you want to be Alabama, but whoever it is, and Georgia is the 2022, 2021 BC college football playoff national champions. What is it going to mean to you?
Oh, I mean, look, we had, when I was in 2012, we were so dang close to going to the national championship game, and I know that, when you get that close, you can taste it. It leaves a pretty bittersweet taste in your mouth. And then when you see the fact that they had 3 or 4 other attempts where they got as close, if not closer, it's a gut punch now, right? It hurts your soul. And knowing what it means to play football at the University of Georgia, what it means to the state, what it means to the university, to be a student athlete there, I know how badly these guys want it. I know how hard these guys work and what they sacrifice and what their coaches and the administration staff sacrifices. So I'm always pulling for them. I know my teammates and former teammates are always pulling for them. So there would be a certain level of vindication for them to get over the hump and win a national championship. But teams just haven't done. I know these guys have put in the work. I know they've done everything they possibly can at this point. They just have to go out there and execute. And luckily, they've put themselves in a position, for the second time in 3 or 4 years, where they're one of the Final Four teams. And hopefully, at the end of the year, early 2022, they're the last team standing.
Arthur Lynch, our guest here on 3 and Out, former Georgia tight end. Our guest, Arthur, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. Go Dogs.
Appreciate it. Arthur Lynch joining us here on 3 and Out. And again, disappointment in the SEC championship game, but Ben still have a second round here. They've got to get through. Michigan may have another crack at Alabama before it's all said and done.
Oh man, I mean, Arthur kind of said it the best, man. He said that when you think about this Georgia team, they had a mulligan. Going into a game knowing that I'm going to be in the college football playoff, no matter what happens, is definitely a comforting feeling, Kevin. But just like I know, that one thorn in their side, even going way back when. I mean, Georgia's played Alabama 5 times in the championship game. They've lost 5 times to Alabama, I guess, in the SEC championship game, or 5 times overall. You want to be able to know that can we do it? I think about this again. Urban Meyer is not just famous because he won national championships in Florida. Who did he have to beat to get there? Had to beat Alabama. Urban Meyer, when he goes to Ohio State, who did he have to beat in the college football playoff? Alabama. Dabo Swinney. Who do you have to beat? Alabama. Coach Orgeron. Who do you have to beat? Alabama. So these guys, they are throwing in a lot of people's sides. Throwing in a lot of people's sides. So I think that Kevin, yes, it's good, but one thing about it, the notion of we want Bama, sounds like Freddy Krueger to me, man. Everybody say they want it till they got it, and it doesn't matter what they did when they wasn't playing you. It's what you did when you played them, and not too many teams can say they hoisted up that W against them boys from Tuscaloosa.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll get to your phone calls and more. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio or dial us up 912-342-7184. We're talking college football playoffs and more next. It's 3 and Out. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, glad you are with us. College football playoffs, Ben. Alabama and Cincinnati, Georgia and Michigan. We talked a lot about people expecting the rematch, but let's talk about the first games. How competitive do you think this is going to be? Because it seems like a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's Cincinnati; they're a good story," but Alabama will handle them. And again, a lot of people talking up the rematch with Georgia and Bama. How competitive? And a lot of times that's been the rub. We don't need to expand the playoffs. We can't even get competitive games in a 4-team playoff. How competitive do you expect it to be?
I expect it to be extremely competitive, and this is why. Kevin, just think about this season. Okay, nobody expected when Michigan played Ohio State, we just chalked it up, man. Michigan can't beat Ohio State. It's going to be, different years, same result. And then you turn on the TV and go, my God, Michigan didn't just beat Ohio State. They ran them off the field. All right, Oklahoma State, man, this is the year. They finally beat Oklahoma. They're going to win the Big 12. Get beat in the Big 12 championship game. Cincinnati, there's no way they're going to make the college football playoff, man. They Cincinnati, no one cares about Cincinnati. They beat Notre Dame, ain't good enough. They're in. I keep telling people this. You got to look at the stakes first, not just who's playing. For people thinking that Georgia is just going to push over Michigan, based off of what? Michigan beat their team they had to beat to get here. What if Georgia had to beat Alabama to get in the SEC championship game? They probably wouldn't have got there. So all I'm saying is Cincinnati is a team, Kevin, that's been, let's face it, looked over, but what they needed to do, they did. Two things that happened, they needed to happen. They needed to beat Notre Dame, and they needed Notre Dame to stay good the rest of the year and only lose to them, and Notre Dame did that. So I would say the same thing we thought about Cincinnati against Georgia last year in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, that came down to a field goal. And who was the starting quarterback? JT Daniels. Who was the starting receivers and all? They had a full array of receivers and running backs, and it came down to a field goal. Now,
I was going to say Desmond Ritter was the quarterback. He's still there.
Desmond Ritter was the quarterback. And Kevin, Kobe Bryant, one may he rest in peace. There is a Kobe Bryant that plays, for Cincinnati, might be the number one cornerback in the country, and that's taking nothing away from every other cornerback coming out in the 2022 draft. Stop looking past people because of that's just Michigan. Let me tell y'all something. When it comes to brands, Notre Dame is the biggest brand in college football. Michigan ain't far behind. Michigan is a huge brand. So when people think, they going to travel? Yes. Michigan is like Cub fans. They've been waiting on this a long time. So they're going to travel. But Kevin, as soon as Georgia wanted, I'm not saying Georgia, but as soon as Georgia decided to look past Michigan, Michigan got two things that Georgia ain't, three things: a pass rush, a offensive line, and a running game. They can run that thing. They got two bookend defensive ends, with one potentially being, Hutchinson potentially being the number one pick. And they got some offensive linemen, man, that they got beef up front, and a quarterback who, he ain't getting a lot of respect because of where he plays, not what he's doing. And as far as like Alabama and Cincinnati, they fighting for respect. They like, dude, what else we got to do? We play in this conference. We in a part of America that most people don't really, cherish football outside the Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers and the Ravens. I'm sorry that we're the Bearcats, but guess what? The Bearcats are one of the top 4 teams. So people go, who went to the Bearcats? You ever heard of a guy named Travis Kelce? Best tight end in the NFL? Yeah, he played for them nasty natty boys. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, Kevin, it's going to be more competitive than we think because of the stakes. And dare I say this? I know everybody's looking forward to the rematch, and I'm probably one of those people too. But is college football ready for a Michigan-Cincinnati national championship?
Well,
I don't think, Kevin, that's going to happen. But I just think at the end of the day, Kevin, Cincinnati is going to show you why they're afraid to put teams like that in the college football playoff, because they're better than people give them credit for. Let's face it, the average person has never seen Cincinnati Bearcats play. You've seen the Cincinnati Bengals, haven't seen the Bearcats, and when it comes to Georgia, they expect Georgia to just run all over, Michigan. But I'm telling you, the most compelling game gonna be that night, the nightcap. Michigan versus Georgia. I'm telling y'all, Michigan make this a 4-quarter game, one of those ugly Big Ten type games, Kevin. If Georgia loses to Michigan, what is that going to do to not just Kirby Smart, but the Georgia program? Because you're going to start saying, is it us, or what may happen?
In the big game, I potentially, but I would say they're still on solid footing because they got there.
Yes.
And I will take, college football play. I mean, how much is it going to help Cincinnati? The fact that they're there, huge. I mean, the fact that they're going to play, even if they lose to Alabama, big. The fact that Cincinnati was there got to help that program in a big way. I think for Georgia, it's just don't get caught up in the we're ready for the rematch, and everybody's saying rematch, rematch, rematch.
Yeah.
Because again, I think Michigan, as you said, is a very good team, and they're equally as hungry. We talked earlier with Brooks Austin. Look, for as much as Georgia wants to get this, I mean, it's been since 2004 before Michigan has been hanging around the top of the standings like this. And now they're here. They're the number 2 seed going into
and they earn and out of the 4 teams in it, they got the best resume. Like you look at who played the hardest teams, it would be Michigan with Penn State. You talk about Michigan, Ohio State. But I just know this, Kevin, man. The thing about college football, it's very, very even when the stakes are the same. It's like if you're playing in a championship game, it really doesn't matter what you've done up to that point. Can you do it now? All that stuff you've done doesn't matter. Can you do it today? The great Herm Edwards said, "Look, it's not about who you are; it's how you play on the day that you play." And I go back to this Michigan team again, once again.
Yeah.
People keep this notion of, it's Michigan. Let me tell y'all something. Michigan have the best set of defensive ends left in the tournament. The best set of cornerbacks, that would be Cincinnati. The best quarterback, that would be Alabama. The best overall team might be Georgia. The most feared team might be, it's so many storylines to go on, but Desmond Ridder, dual threat. A guy that can hurt you with his legs and throwing the football 2 bookend cornerbacks, one name being Kobe Bryant. It's going to be some storylines galore, Kevin, but I'm telling you, Georgia, and we saying as if Georgia has said, Georgia, this is all fans and narratives being pushed out there, but if you're Michigan, you seeing what you can, expose for Georgia. And the one thing you can is, dude, if we can pick up this blitz, we can pick up this pass rush, we got a shot. Because let me tell y'all something. I don't care who your cornerbacks are and safeties are. One-on-one with cornerbacks and receivers, I will take that matchup on the offensive side every single time. But the one thing Michigan DBs know, they got a pass rush. So it's gonna be BJ, Kevin. We're gonna break this game down every which way possible. But the more we start getting into the numbers, I know BJ is a numbers guy. Hopefully he'll be back with us tomorrow. Michigan is dangerous. Cincinnati is dangerous because Michigan isn't a usual suspect. They ain't Ohio State. They ain't the face of the conference. Cincinnati, where they come from, what conference who they even play. So because you got 2 unusual suspects against 2, quote, national, appealing teams, we go with the national appeal. Okay. I'm telling you, we might be shocked. I think the Shocker got more of a chance to be in the Michigan Georgia game than Cincinnati Alabama.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, Kevin, it's gonna be a better game than people give it credit for because, like I said, Cincinnati can do Cincinnati. We finally got a team, Kevin, to say it's us against the world because it is. Now with them, that's a true narrative.
Yeah, and again, you talk about anything can happen in college football. Look no further than Championship Saturday. Georgia was the favorite on the field. They lost. Oklahoma State, I believe, was the favorite. They lost in the Big 12 championship game. Out in the West, was it the WAC San Diego State?
Yep.
Was the clear favorite in that conference. I think they were like 11-1, and they lost. So you saw a number of supposed favorites lose in their conference championship game. And I asked this a couple weeks ago when you heard, hey, the SEC got 13 of their 14 schools, and I'm like, yeah, and half of those are 6-6 and 7-5. Are we seeing parity in college football to the point where nobody's running away and dominating this thing? The middle seems to be pretty gooey where anybody can beat anybody. Hence a lot of 7-5, 6-6 teams all across power conferences seemingly out there. And why wouldn't that carry over into the playoffs where who knows? I mean, I would like to think Georgia is going to be favored over Michigan, but after last weekend, who knows? I would like to think Michigan looks like they're better, but on a given Saturday against Georgia, who knows? They may not be. They may not be. So you just never can't tell going into these situations this year, especially how it's going to turn out. We got so much to get to still here on the show. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. We're talking a lot about the playoffs, but how about those new coaches, those new jobs? They come with new expectations as well, and some seats could already be getting pretty warm pretty quickly. We'll get to that when we come back. This is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here. 3 and out, Ben. Early signing period, 9 days away. Of course, you had all kinds of head coaches get new jobs, huge deals, lots of money, private jets, housing allowances, house buyouts, all those things we talked about. And with that comes an expectation, Ben. And we have, in the last year, seen a coach who played and won national championship, head coach of the most dominating football team we've seen in a long time. And before year 2 after that was over, he was out. The OC, the architect of that, left to take a pro job. He was the new wave of offensive coordinators. A year and a half out. Billy Napier, Brent Venables, Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, Mario Cristobal, all getting huge money to be at their new jobs. How quickly are those guys? I mean, you can listen to some specifically. How quickly are some of those guys on the hot seat? I know Billy Napier came in. Look, he's got all the credentials. Said, look, up my recruiting budget. Alabama spends money on recruiting. They spend money on staff. They spend money on analysts. Georgia spends money on analysts. I want it upped. Put me right there. I think he got and asked for it and got it. Money right behind Alabama and in between Alabama and Georgia in terms of most money spent on analysts, coaching staff, etc. They don't do that. So you can go to 6-6 and go play in the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl. Right? Yeah. So how quickly and who maybe feels the pressure first? I mean, Brent Venables, first-time head coach, walking into a team that is about to go to the SEC and has playoff expectations right now. How quick? Who gets the seat turned up hottest on him the quickest?
I'm going to go Lincoln Riley, because the thing about it is this. He really had no reason to leave Oklahoma. He just wanted to leave Oklahoma because, I want to make a lateral move. And Lincoln Riley wants to be the headliner. I don't want to have to really share, the platform of, with nobody else. I know I had to deal with Texas, but we beat them every year. So I think it's Lincoln Riley because, Kevin, number one, USC. When's the last time we really talked about them being a contender, not just in the Pac-12 to win it consistently year in and year out, but we haven't seen the Pac-12, represented in the college football playoff as of late. Lincoln Riley, his contract, my goodness. They got to buy his houses in Norman. He had to. Don't know why he had to, but he did have to. That ain't my business. He gets, $10 million a year in California. He gets a $6 million housing allowance. My God. I got allowance when I was a kid. It wasn't like that. So for me, I think it is Lincoln Riley. But very, very close to number 2, I think it's Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame. I ain't never seen nothing like this. And Notre Dame had an outside chance of making the college football playoff if things would have got even wackier, if a Georgia would have beaten, Alabama, and Michigan would have lost. So for me, I think it's Brian Kelly, but Kevin, number 3 might be Brent Venables because Oklahoma is a big time brand. They changed coaches, still same result. He gonna have to come in and win in a hurry. And he's been the name you've been hearing for the last 3 or 4 years, right? Like Venables. What could be the team to get him out of there? He wanted the ideal situation, and I think he wanted 2 things. I don't think he wanted to have to play Clemson. Check, but he didn't foresee Oklahoma going to the SEC. But Kevin, I said Lincoln Riley, then Kelly, then Venables, but I know this is crazy. It might be all of them, Kevin, because think about this. All of them are part of the same coaching carousel cycle. So they're going to group them all together. Hey, we're going to be comparing them. It's like RG3 and Andrew Luck, right? It's like Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. Who you do things with, that's who they're going to group. Mario Cristobal, let me tell you something. It ain't Mario's fault. I'm not blaming him. But because of how Miami got him, Kevin, it's almost like, hey, man,
there's going to be scrutiny on that job.
You better do something because, Kevin, just like I would know. I know. There is no mulligans. There is no get it right. There is no patience. Like what Michigan showed Harbaugh, that's unheard of. To give him that much time to finally get over the hump. Now, when he did, he made it to the – now how he finishes this season. But, Kevin, I think it's all of them. Billy Napier rolled out the red carpet, scared money don't make money. $7.5 million, I think, is spending for analysts and assistant coaches and all these different things. If I'm giving you all this, it better be worth it. So, Miami, Florida, LSU, Oklahoma, USC, and obviously you got other schools like TSU, Virginia. But Kevin, just like I know, big time programs, they want to win it all. So Lincoln Riley, Venables, Napier, Kelly, Cristobal. They got what these last 4 teams are doing is what they expect y'all to do. And Kevin, unfortunately, when you a high profile, now who's under the most pressure might be Billy Napier because he's coming from, Louisiana to Florida with all these demands. But Kevin, just like I know, patience in college football, those two things are not mutually exclusive. Yeah. You're gonna have to find a way to get it done. But I think all these guys are gonna have to find a way to get it done, Kevin, because they're gonna be like, hey man, you usually get what you pay for. Well, not with college coaches, you don't. You just hope that you get a return on your investment.
Yeah, look, and I think just the pressure to win. And again, if you're Billy Napier, you're walking in where the team in your division is in the playoffs again. Yep. If you're Brian Kelly, a team you have to play every year is in the national champion, is in the college football playoffs. A crossover team, it just got Billy Napier as their coach. So, I'll be interested to see like who's patient and who isn't. I think the quickest move up might be Brian Kelly at LSU because of where LSU sits presently. I think a lot of people looked at Coach Orgeron and said, look, the talent's there. It's just bad luck, injuries, etc., and maybe just went south. But the talent is there for them to win more games than they've been winning. So maybe you get it turned around even in a tough conference. Brent Venables, first-time head coach. Right now you're in the Big 12. I think by all projections, year 2 or year 3. Year 2 or year 3 right now of the Brent Venables campaign, they will be transitioning into the SEC.
Yes, and ain't gonna be no. Hey, we're gonna give you a mulligan year. You better come out swinging.
Yeah, I mean it's good. And again, who knows what the conference dynamic will look like as far as who you have to play. You'll have to play Texas at the very least. Probably have to play Texas A&M, and maybe Arkansas as common opponents. But again, does going into the SEC get you a mulligan and a redo? As you said, I don't know that it does. Especially if you come. I mean, that's just some of the things that'll be interesting to watch as some of these programs evolve. Do we rechange expectations for the SEC when it goes to a 16-team league? And you look at it and say, well, now may not have to play them every year, but maybe I dumped Missouri this year and picked up Texas.
Yeah,
maybe I dropped Vanderbilt and picked up Oklahoma. Like you guys got. I mean, I'm just saying.
I mean,
on the rotation, it's interesting.
In a situation like that, Kevin, I don't see. Just say they go quads. I don't see Alabama and Auburn not being in the same one. I don't see Georgia and Florida not being in the same one. I don't see, maybe like a Texas A&M and LSU not being in the same one. But then like you said, but
you'll rotate through the opponents.
The crazy part about it is this. Listen, it's gonna come down to the epicenter. It's gonna come down to Atlanta. Are you in Atlanta playing for the SEC championship? Because this is the thing. Like, that's the two things when you're in certain conferences. Hey man, SEC champion, you're gonna make the college football playoff unless you do what Georgia just did. Georgia lost, but they was undefeated, number 1, and they lost, and they made the college football playoff. I don't know. And Kevin, we could be seeing the last of undefeated seasons too. Like something you always say, if you're in the biggest, baddest conference, right, you shouldn't be no 12-0, 11-0. I don't care how good your team is. And I think that we may be coming to an end with that. Even Alabama lost a game this year, and they end the regular season, after the championship games as number 1 in the country. These coaches now, Kevin, because coaches are the faces of college football. Let me just say that. Coaches are the faces. Then you got the brand, but the ones that run it, presidents, chancellors, board of trustees, boosters. These people run college football. How do I know? Mario Cristobal is getting $8 million. Mario Cristobal he's the highest paid coach in the state. Who's the most least accomplished team as of late in the state of Florida? Miami. Yes, and Florida State hasn't made a bowl game in the last 2 or 3 years. They ain't gonna make a bowl game this year. Who's went to a more recent national championship? That would be Florida State. Who's won the most since 2000? No, I think Florida's won 2. Miami has been to 1 ACC championship. So, Kevin, it's halfway you go and more and 50% what they gave you. $80 million, dude. So they got to give Manny Diaz $9 million buyout. They got to give Mario Cristobal $8 million a year. And that's off the strength of what he did at Oregon, and he got that thing put on him twice this year by Utah. So, Kevin, listen, at the end of the day, when you paying that type of money, Kevin, and me and you the chancellor at these schools, like, I know behind closed doors ain't our money, but we say, man, we giving you $8 million. It's almost like this, like it's all laughing and joking when introductory press conference, but at the end of the day, dude, we giving you $8 million in a wait a minute. Ain't Florida no tax, no state tax. I'm just saying. So we'll see what happens, Kevin. But all of them are under a lot of pressure. But what you said about Brian Kelly gonna have to find a way to have success in a hurry because last 3 guys that coached there won national championships, regardless of how it ended. They got 3
Yeah,
names.
no pressure at all in that situation. But yeah, I think with the money comes a lot of pressure because a lot of these teams, and we kind of make a joke about it anymore, where you're like, hey, so and so got signed, and you don't bat an eye saying they got $8 million. Well, with $8 million, it's not the same as a guy making $2 million. I mean, and again, I give you $8 million. That's a significant chunk of money to outlay for one person there to run the football program. And with that comes a little return on investment, a little return on investment expectation there.
$8 million. Okay, I want to hold on. Coach O is no longer in coaching. He was number 2, right behind Nick Saban, but he had a national championship.
Right.
The coach at Stanford was number 3, and
David Shaw.
And David Shaw ain't about to sniff no college football playoff, even with the success he had at Stanford. Guys are coming in now making national. I want to say Dan Mullen, before he left, was making more than Kirby Smart. Think about that. I'm just telling y'all, it's about where you're coaching and as much money as you can get. Cristobal is getting $8 million, and his team used to wear them John Deere looking jerseys. I just think at the end of the day, Kevin, you're right. It's a responsibility that comes with the money first, and then you got to get the team nationally relevant. Then you got to win your conference. Then you got to win the championship. Then you got to win the national. Hey man, that's what comes with it. If you want to coach big time football, that is a responsibility that comes with it.
Absolutely. And again, a lot of new coaches. Again, I just named a few: Billy Napier, Brent Venables, Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, Mario Cristobal. You got Brent Pry there at Virginia Tech. Yep. They want to win championship. Virginia, Duke Open. I mean, you got several more
Matt
jobs.
Brown in North Carolina. Yeah. It doesn't go away.
You have several jobs.
Steve Sarkisian in Texas. What happened to him?
I mean, look, and again, you still have some Power 5 jobs open, but those things are getting filled quickly because, again, early signing period coming up in 9 days, right around the corner. A lot of these guys have got to hit the ground running, and it starts with recruiting, and then it has got to show on the field in the not too distant future. We got more to come here. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Oh, good to be here on this Monday. Ben, we are a little more than a week away from bowl season starting. A week from Friday will be bowl season officially. We'll have way more bowl games that are necessary, but we will have them. Even one that was just made up out of thin air. It has no name, no date yet. And I don't know if they've told the teams that they're playing. I'm assuming they have. Hey, welcome to the No Name, No Place Bowl. We'll get to that later, but you guys are in. We're excited to have you, Ben. Don't know where it is or what the name of it is, but you ready to go? Good.
I mean, Kevin, you already know what's going to be on social media when they do that. Like, Kevin, guys, before you guys get ready to go home for Christmas break, we're going to the No Name Bowl. They go just like scream, go crazy. Yeah. But Kevin, for those of you who don't know, Kevin cares about two things when it comes to college football: upsets and bowl season. That's it. Kevin loves bowl season. He says there's not enough bowl games. I mean, so much so we just run out of names. I mean, who cares bowl, shrimp bowl, chicken bowl, cereal bowl? I mean, if they called him that, I mean, there's a kid that was like, hey, man, we go to a bowl game, man. Do we get free stuff? Yeah, what's the purpose of going to a bowl game if you're not going to get no free stuff? But shout out to all the 6 and 6 teams, with one of those teams being my Florida Gators. It is hard these days getting the 7 wins.
I think you guys are not going to the No Name Bowl.
Oh, no. We are going to the Asperilla Bowl. I formerly known, I think it's the Beef O'Brady's Bowl in Tampa. And one young man said, quote, do we get to go to Outback? Well, that would be the Outback Bowl. So no. I don't think
Billy Napier's first job.
I don't think you go
Gasparilla Bowl.
You can probably go with Outback Bowl with that gratuity money they give you guys. But
That's
no,
right.
Shout out to every team that made it. I mean, because as Kevin knows, once bowl season start, when they start having 3 and 4 bowls, a bowl at 10 o'clock, a bowl at 12 o'clock, a bowl at 2 o'clock. Shout out to the teams that made it, man. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's Billy Napier again, as I said. Gasparilla Bowl, not the Outback Bowl. Job number 1. But so many bowl games, and they're making them up to get everybody in, and that's a shame. I think this. I mean, I guess that's a bad equivalent because they do let teams in that are under 500 into the NFL or the NBA playoffs. But I mean, it would be like the equivalent of, hey, Detroit Lions, you won 5 games. Yeah, I know you were 5-11, but you did good. We're gonna make up a game. And we're just going to call it hey, you're not picking number 1 bowl. And you will get to play the Cleveland Browns in a 1-game situation. How many games you win? Oh, it doesn't matter. Detroit and Cleveland. And to thank God you're not picking first again bowl. Coming to a NFL stadium.
What Kevin doesn't like is the one they had to make up. Like you don't even know what the bowl game is. But if you're in that bowl, congratulations. Yes. Because there are some teams that will not be in them, and that doesn't mean they're not good teams. They just, that coveted 6 is rough.
Yeah. Enjoy it every last minute. Can't tell you what the bowl game is because we don't know. We'll see you tomorrow. It's 3 and Out.
Can't tell you what the bowl game is. Well,